There has been a destructive force unleashed on this town such as I have never seen.
The mystery heart condition that has killed over 30 people in less than 4 years has claimed another victim. Doctors are baffled as to why seemingly fit and healthy people are suffering massive heart attacks. Many of Fairwater's residents are claiming that the shadow of death has once again descended on the town.
Persistent residue of the departed. It's always a problem this time of year. Frank Bannister, I believe you called. Not a minute too soon. Yeah. This could be the worst case I have ever seen. What the hell are you trying to do to me?
Preying on the bereaved is about as low as you can go. You're a parasite, Mr. Bannister, and people should be warned.
Yeah, well, I got a right to offer my services to the public.
In case you hadn't noticed, we are in the midst of a major health crisis.
Bannister, what is happening to me?
Want to tell me what happened?
I was on the rowing machine, and then suddenly I felt this vice-like grip just squeezing my heart, and I couldn't breathe, right? I couldn't breathe.
Tell me, why is it that you can see Ray and I can't?
I was in an accident. It was a car accident. About 5 years ago. They say that sometimes when you have a traumatic experience that it can alter your perception.
Give it up, Frank. Death ain't no way to make a living.
I've drawn up a list of suggestions. Bear in mind, Frank, that we have given you 5 years of loyal service.
That was the Soul Collector. And he's been taking people out since time began.
All these murders that have been going on in Fairwater, they're gonna pin them on you. Stu and I are gonna get you out of here, so come on, man, let's go.
I've seen a figure in a cape. I've seen him reach into people's chests and squeeze their hearts.
Who was it?
Death.
July of 1996 saw The Frighteners arrive on the big screen in the United States, but didn't turn up in the UK till January of 1997, produced on a relatively large budget of $30 million and filmed in New Zealand. It unfortunately didn't make much money on release, just managing to only recoup its budget back worldwide. It performed poorly in the USA. Universal Studios were very impressed with the film and pushed the movie's schedule forward for a summer release. Peter Jackson wasn't happy with the marketing for the film. The poster he felt didn't sell the movie, and he does have a valid point. It gives you no idea what the film is about. The reviews were certainly more positive than negative, but Roger Ebert gave it 1 star out of 4. He felt it was a movie all about special effects and nothing else. It's difficult to determine what made it fail so badly. I'm guessing the marketing played a big part, and releasing a horror film during the middle of the summer I feel is a big mistake. It's best to leave it till October, when the general public are seeking out movies of this nature. Hardcore movie fans who had a lot of spare cash and were into Laserdiscs back in the day, Universal Studios released a special edition set of The Frighteners on Laserdisc, which had an epic 4-hour documentary, and it was the only version you could watch of the extended cut. DVD owners had to wait till 2006 for it to come out with all the extra content. The director's cut, or say extended version, does incorporate more dialogue between Frank and the ghosts, and expands upon more of the characters' backgrounds, but doesn't essentially improve the movie considerably. You get roughly 15 minutes more footage. This would be the last major film for Michael J. Fox. Fox was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 1991 and disclosed his condition to the public in 1999. He semi-retired from acting in 2000 as the symptoms of his disease became more severe. Michael was the first person approached for the film, and after watching Peter Jackson's previous film Heavenly Creatures and being impressed with the script, he took on the role. Michael definitely has a skill at balancing comedy and drama, and he seems to fit the role of Frank Bannister nicely. Peter Jackson was originally aiming for a PG-13 rating, but once it was submitted for the MPAA, he was given an R rating and they wouldn't budge on lowering it. So he took advantage of the rating and threw in some quick gory scenes, which I suppose does seem a bit out of place in comparison to how everything else has been executed in its visual attempts to scare. The Frighteners was written by Peter Jackson and his wife Fran Walsh. Robert Zemeckis viewed their treatment with the intention of producing The Frighteners as a spin-off film of the television series Tales from the Crypt, which he helped produce. Zemeckis hired Jackson and Walsh to turn their treatment into a full-length screenplay in January of 1993. The husband and wife duo completed their first draft of The Frighteners in early January of 94. Zemeckis was so impressed with the script, he decided The Frighteners would work on its own and not as a spin-off from Tales from the Crypt. In 1990, architect Frank Bannister loses his wife Deborah in a car accident. He gives up his profession, letting his unfinished dream house sit incomplete for years. Following the accident, Frank gains the power to see ghosts and befriends three: Cyrus, a 1970s gangster, Stuart, a 1950s nerd, and the Judge, a gunslinger from the Old West. The ghosts haunt houses in the area to accumulate work for Frank's ghostbusting business. Frank then exorcises the house for a fee. Most locals see him as a con man, and the movie starts out with him visiting funerals advertising his services, which catches the attention of the local Gazette newspaper. Frank cons local health nut Ray Linsky and his wife Lucy, a physician. After Frank has removed the ghosts, Frank notices a number marked on Ray's head, which leaves him spooked out. Ray dies of a heart attack not long after. An encounter with his ghosts leads Frank to discover that an entity representing himself as the Grim Reaper is killing people and leaving the number markings on their foreheads. Frank's wife Deborah had a similar marking when she was found dead. Because Frank can see the numbers ahead of time, he can foretell the murders, but this puts him under suspicion with the police. Even Sheriff Walt Perry, who is usually patient with Frank, calls in FBI agent Milton Dammers. Highly paranoid, obsessive and disturbed from years of undercover work, Dammers is convinced that Frank is responsible for the killings. Frank is captured and detained after the town's newspaper editor-in-chief, Madge Reese Jones, is killed. She had previously published articles attacking him. During the confusion of the arrest, the Judge dies when he tries to protect Frank from the Reaper. During the production of Heavenly Creatures, Peter Jackson had set up Weta Digital, and when it came to The Frighteners, he had wanted to use his effects team and invested heavily in many computers to take on the task. The movie is known for its heavy use of CGI, but the movie does incorporate some very effective miniatures, which are used when Frank turns into a ghost and flies through the town to reach the cemetery. At the time, the computer effects were very impressive and received good feedback from critics. There are many shots that still look good today, but it does have that mid-90s look. Everything lacks that fine detail and texture and looks very rubbery. It may be down to the effects team being inexperienced with CGI, because the release date was moved forward. Weta was falling behind schedule, so ILM were brought in to assist the production. Weta Digital has certainly become one of the best effects companies around today, and they are used constantly for the big summer blockbusters. There are some shots that haven't aged well. Some of the shots where Frank gets attacked by the ghost in the painting looks pretty bad, and unfortunately many shots of the Green Reaper don't look real. They are certainly animated extremely well. There were discussion of using a puppet for death, but it was unfortunately dropped in favour of CGI, which is understandable, but some of the pre-production shots of death as a puppet look very creepy. Danny Elfman provides the soundtrack, and in typical fashion it sounds very much like his previous work. It borrows cues from Beetlejuice and Batman Returns. There are some original and effective action cues and moments where he creates a great sense of foreboding, which really helps the movie, and especially the opening credit sequence. It's not a bad soundtrack and certainly not boring to listen to, but I think Peter Jackson could have chose a composer who was a bit more versatile. Danny Elfman did say in the documentary for the film, he can only do so many different styles.
I always hope that something I work on isn't going to sound just like something else, but there are genres and it's impossible to avoid. Obviously, a dark comedy like The Frighteners, I can't totally 100% get away from other dark comedies, let's say of Tim Burton, that I've done, where there's going to be some crossover, but whether it be Beetlejuice or, you know, Nightmare Before Christmas or Darkman or Nightbreed, there's going to be some amount of crossover, but I always go, well, that's okay. I am the same composer. When I grew up, I used to listen to Bernard Herrmann scores, and I would be able to tell that it was the same composer in all the science fiction films in the 60s of his that I grew up on. So on the one hand, I don't want them to sound too similar. On the other hand, I can't make them sound like they're all completely from separate people because I don't have more than 2 or 3 people living inside here. So, I wish I had 10, but I don't. I only have 2 or 3 that have to get along, and they usually divide up the work depending on what type of film it is and what type of score it's going to be.
Danny Elfman apparently took on the job as composer because he was a huge fan of Peter's previous work. I totally missed The Frighteners on release, and eventually saw it on VHS when it came out, and I did rent it frequently. When I was younger, I really enjoyed the idea behind the movie and how Frank sees ghosts and uses them to benefit himself. The appearance of death through the first half is very effective, but the majority of the film isn't really scary and just employs the odd jump scare here and there, which do work, but as most horror fans are fully aware, it is a cheap way to scare the audience. It has Peter Jackson's style all over it. He makes great use of the CinemaScope format. I always felt he was very much inspired by Sam Raimi's style of directing. He uses a lot of Dutch angles and fast cuts. It certainly works in the movie's favour and blends well with the horror/comedy approach, which Sam Raimi is the master of. The comedy certainly works very well. The Ghost of Cyrus definitely has some of the best lines.
Oh, ain't that a bitch? The ectoplasm's the only thing sticking enough to hold a damn car together. Look, Frank, I'm sorry about your puss yellow piece of shit Volvo, but we ain't riding in the damn trunk no more, you understand? We would like to cruise with some style, man. Now, Frank, we gotta talk about cigars.
Cigars?
Damn right, you've been promising me a box for I don't know how long.
Josh, I hate to break this to you, but you're dead, you can't smoke.
Well, you can light them up and blow the smoke in my face. Whoa, hey, good shooting, Tex. And she was so young and beautiful. No. Hey, man, pulling your drawers off? Man, what the hell? Benny? Oh, my man, Benny. Stu, it's my boy here, Benny, man. Hey, Benny, but I'm your friend, man. Seriously, 3 words. Shower with soap.
But the character that steals the film is the FBI agent Milton Dammers, played by Jeffrey Combs, who many horror fans know as the star of The Reanimator. His character is creepy, funny, eccentric and fascinating to watch. Some people feel his character is very much out of place and takes you out of the movie once he turns up. He clearly has the most extreme personality that has certainly divided people, but I think he works well within the story and provides some effective exposition during his scenes at the police station. Jake Busey provides a very disturbing and effective performance as the psychotic murderer Johnny Bartlett. Once it's revealed that he has been going around as the Grim Reaper, continuing his killing spree, you would think it may take away some of the tension, but once he is in his ghost form, the movie certainly continues that sense of tension throughout. Being a great actor, he manages to add a lot to what could have been a bland villain. When Frank enters the old hospital and gets flashbacks of Johnny and Patricia's massacre, it amps up the suspense and certainly leaves you on the edge of your seat as Frank attempts to hide. When Frank is strangled to death and becomes a ghost, he manages to pull the spirit of Patricia out of her body. There's no indication that ghosts can do that. I suppose it was the only idea that they could show of Frank fighting back to lure Johnny to the tunnel of light. They could have used Lucy to kill off Patricia so Frank could then grab her. The inclusion of heaven in the movie does seem a little out of place. It has that generic idea of what heaven could look like. Frank sees his wife on the other side, and even when I first saw it, it did feel very cheesy. It's perfectly fine to include the concept of heaven and hell, because the story focuses around ghosts and death, so those ideas go hand in hand with the afterlife. It's just the execution of heaven and hell is a bit weak. Johnny and Patricia get attacked by loads of tentacles and a giant worm-like monster that swallows them and takes them to the blackness of hell. The design of it is all a bit weird, and a total overload on the CGI. I think it's probably the weakest aspect of the movie for me. The Frighteners certainly has many fans, and I'm one of them. It's very entertaining and it certainly delivers on many areas of the horror comedy genre, but it's by no means perfect, and if they originally went out to make an R-rated movie, I think it would have been more effective on a horror level. The casting is one of the movie's strongest points, from the health nut Ray to Sergeant Hiles. I love the idea of a guy who uses ghosts to spook people out for profit, and it is definitely an idea that could be revisited in the future with a different film, and could be taken more seriously if someone decided to borrow a few ideas from it. The Frighteners is a very easy film to get hold of, and if you are a fan of horror with comedy thrown in, it should certainly please you, but if you are expecting something truly scary and frightening as the movie's title suggests, you may be very disappointed. For me, it's a very rewatchable film that always draws me back because of the great cast and comedy. It's no masterpiece or anything award-winning, but it doesn't matter. In the end of the day, it's a great movie to add to your collection that I can guarantee you will return to on a regular basis.
You don't know who my daughter is, do you? Patricia's not to be trusted. They said she was an accessory after the fact. I know the truth. It was cold-blooded murder.
Who are you? Johnny Bartlett. I thought guys like you frightened hell.
Get out, Frank. I've been carrying on the good work. Got me a score of 40.
Mrs. Bradley,
Johnny Bartlett's ashes.
what?
We gotta get these to the other side.
Give me the goddamn urn, dammers!
Under no circumstances must these ashes ever be released.
No!
Hey, boys! Free Doc! Doc, I did it again.